Hello folks, welcome along to the pilot episode of a brand new series that I'm testing out on the channel. In this series, I want to make it a tutorial-like series where I show you guys how to make successful versions of different types of tactics. So, as you've already seen, in this video, I want to show you guys how to make a successful possession-based tactic and what you can do in terms of tactics, positions, instructions in order to make it more viable and possible for you. Just a quick note for those of you who haven't already, consider supporting me on Patreon. There you get access to loads of great perks and rewards, including my FIFA 22 custom tactics package, where I give a deep dive ratings, rankings and breakdowns of every real tactic I cover on the series. For those of you who are new to the channel, I do also show you how to recreate real tactics, so go and check out those videos as well. If you do enjoy this video and find it helpful, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you get notifications every time I upload. And with that being said, let's get into it. So first things first, let's talk about the actual formation. Now I've selected Lazio here just because of the Maurizio Sarri element. Of course we know how they're going to play, that Sarrismo type influence and style, so we're going to go with them. And let's talk about formations first. Now we're going to go with a 4-3-3 here, but there are a range of different formations that you can choose. Now really any formation could work theoretically in terms of possession, but there's a reason why managers generally in real life, not just in FIFA, generally go to the same ones. The likes of the 4-3-3, you could have a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3, etc. And that's because they want more numbers, and they want more numbers in the midfield, for one, and also because zonally they cover the most areas. So for example, with this 4-3-3, zonally you've got men all over the pitch, which is absolutely vital for a possession-based system. You don't want lots of gaps being formed where your players aren't in and aren't able to capitalise on that space. You want lots of players in as many different positions as possible. So when you're going through the formation, we're going to use the 4-3-3, but make sure you've got one or use one that is able to do that. So for example, you might go for, if we have a look here, maybe like a 3-4-1-2. That's a good one to do. A 3-5-2 as well. A 3-5-1-1 would also get that done. The 3-4-3s, etc. Those sort of things, you can get that done. A 4-2-3-1 as well, if you want more of a 4-back system. That's also viable for you. Again, like 4-4-2s, it can work, but then you've not got players in those sort of advanced areas, in which case it's a bit harder to have that successful possession-based system. So for the sake of this video, we'll stick to what Lazio do, and they're going with that Sarrismo style 4-3-3. But the most important element is that you've got enough numbers in the defence and the midfield, because that's what's going to boost and make that possession-based system viable. More numbers, more players. So what about the actual tactics themselves? Well, let's talk about defensively. Now, for a possession-based system, you have to press. You just have to, because you need to regain the ball back quickly and on your own terms. And so it needs to be one of these three: pressure on heavy touch, press after possession loss, or constant pressure. In addition, I would also advise you guys to use the team press feature, which is down and then left on the D-pad on your controller. This will instigate a press for 7 to 8 seconds and enable you to try and win that ball back. Now, it doesn't have to be constant pressure, but constant pressure is the go-to. It is the best option if possible. A lot of people complain about stamina and stuff. We can talk about that a little bit later when we come on to forward runs, etc. But it needs to be one of the three, because again, you need to regain possession as quickly as possible and play for that possession. To complement that press, you have to have a high line. You must play with a high line. Otherwise, when it goes into a mid-block, it becomes a little bit more of a counter-attacking situation. Plus, you're not going to be as active enough. Your team's going to be a little bit more passive. You need to try and win the ball back, because that's how you're going to sustain a period of possession and control the game at your pace, at the tempo you want. So 70 onwards is what's going to be a high line. Preferably try and boost this a bit higher. A lot of the possession tactics we've covered on the channel have been 90 and above. Naturally, you will need fast players to complement that as well, so that you're not getting balls played in behind all the time. With your defensive width, this needs to be lower, and a lot of people talk about this in my tactics videos. Why do we need a low width all the time? Because then we find a lot of space for the opposition. It's really a general principle of play, as Jose would call it. Just be compact, be narrow defensively. Don't let them play through you. Now, if you want to complement a press, you can go a little bit above 30 and it becomes a little bit more balanced. Maybe you go up to 40 because you want your players getting out to the wide men and the wing backs, etc., quicker and more effectively. That's fine, but generally it needs to be on the low end because you're going to stop teams playing through you. That is just really a general principle. Now, I don't need to explain too much in terms of the offensively, like slow build up. We know that's really what you need, obviously, for a possession-based system. With chance creation, though, it doesn't have to be strictly possession. You can go for forward runs if you so choose. The most important thing about having successful possession systems is actually movement. Now, it doesn't have to be on forward runs to recreate this because you can still do it with the player instructions as well. But you're not limited to possession. If you want a lot of movement, high volume of movement, you can also go with forward runs. But for this case, we will go with possession and we will try to influence that movement with the player instructions, which we'll go into shortly. You also want to look at other areas such as the set pieces. Corners you're okay, but maybe free kicks, something that we started to do recently on the channel, is lower this down to maybe 2, 3, even 1. What it's going to do is you're just going to have more players surrounding the ball when you've got a deep or a wide free kick, because naturally that's what a lot of possession teams do. They're not going to go long, try and play it direct and try and whip it in or smash it up. They're going to try and still play through the thirds. So they're going to have a lot of players supporting, and it's just going to enable you to go quick from those free kicks, go short and resume your game. Now, with the offensive width, this is very important, something to look at. You want this generally to be on narrow for a successful possession-based tactic. Now, why is that the case? Because a lot of people say, well, how are you supposed to stretch the opposition? Because that's what successful possession systems do, is they want to stretch the opposition. So how can you do that when the system is on narrow? And why do we want it on narrow? So the reason why we have it so low in terms of the numbers is you're going to get a lot of players condensing, particularly the midfield, the centre backs, etc., getting closer to each other. So that means short passing options, easier to retain possession, less high percent or more high percentage passes and less low percentage passes. It's going to make it easier for you to recycle possession. So how are you going to stretch the opposition and make it so you've got lots of space on the outside? If they don't follow you, or if they do, you're going to create lots of space on the inside. Well, you do this through the positions. What you need to make sure is you've got either wingers, or if not wingers, then you want wide midfielders or wing backs. What I tend to do a lot in these is I actually change the fullbacks to wing backs, and what this actually does, it will just get them wider, it will get them more advanced. They literally get onto the touchline, and what that does a lot is, again, it stretches the play. It makes it so they're wide, and we'll talk about the player instructions as well very, very shortly, how you can affect that also. But you want some positions, wingers or wing backs, or wide midfielders, if you're playing like a free back, to be creating that width. They should be on the touchline at all times. With those instructions, let's talk about now creating the width. You naturally, with the fullbacks or wing backs, you're going to want them on overlap. Make sure they're going round the outside. Now, let's say, for example, you're playing a free back and you've got, say, a left and right midfielder as the wing backs, rather than, say, the actual wingers and wing backs. Then in that case, with chance creation, you want them to stay wide. That's how they're going to create that width. So again, the same applies. Let's say you've got inverted fullbacks. So we're going to move these back, actually. Back to left back and right back in this case. Say something similar to what Man City do, what you see often. So they've got the inverted fullbacks. We're going to put them on inverted, and then maybe like stay back while attacking or balance, for example. In that case, the width should be created by the wingers, and you're going to have them wide anyway, but then with their chance creation, have them on stay wide. So again, always someone out on the touchline ready to stretch the opposition and make it so they've got a lot of space out wide. What else can you do with the positioning to make a more effective possession game? Well, it's important that you've got someone always in the advanced areas, the advanced pockets of space, because that's what they do. You don't want the possession to be passive. You need to make sure you've always got them outlets. So let's say, for example, we've got this midfield free here, and it's a flat midfield free. As you can see, we've got a CDM and 2 CMs. What I always like to do is to make sure one of these guys is actually moved up to cam, and what that's going to do is it's going to get him into those more advanced areas, those pockets of spaces. He's going to show more in between the lines of the midfield and the defence of the opposition. Even if you are playing with, say, like a false 9 or a free roaming winger, which we'll talk about shortly, even then it still adds another dimension, because it's really going to link your midfield to your attack in a more effective way. So let's talk about some of the player instructions that you can use for a possession-based system. Well, first things first, sweeper keeper and comes across is a very important, although sweeper keeper doesn't work as much as it should do in game. You still want that because naturally with this possession system you're going to be playing a high line, so that's one thing to keep an eye on. Secondly is positioning freedom. Free roam is extremely handy, something really fun, and it can be applied to a lot of players on the pitch. But what's something that's new for FIFA 22 this year is being able to do it for a defensive midfielder, and I find this to be absolutely invaluable. What it's going to do with that defensive midfielder is he's really going to replicate the role of that deep line playmaker. He's going to drift into more pockets of spaces, just simply move about a bit more, show more movement for your defenders, and that's again going to provide a link between your defence to your midfield and enable you to play it out from the back more successfully. I find free roam on a defensive midfielder, let's say you're playing two, if you're playing a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-5-2, you don't have to have both of them on free roam, you can just have one. Either way, it is still going to be effective for you. Now, free roam can obviously also be applied to these attackers as well, as we've already alluded to, and that's very invaluable. Now, preferably you don't want everyone on free roam, because what you're also going to notice with free roam is, say if you've got it on an attacking midfielder, he'll sometimes be dropping deeper. As a result, he's really got that license to go anywhere around the pitch. So you don't want it on everyone because it's going to make you a little bit more passive. But again, it can be very handy getting him into more areas of space and enabling you to retain possession more effectively. Now, what's very important is the attackers. Now, let's say, for example, we're playing this 4-3-3. Something you don't want to do is to have all three of these attackers on getting behind. Even if all of them are, let's say, very pacey and have got really good movement, you do not want all three of these on getting behind, because what that's going to do is it's going to make it harder for your front three to link up to the rest of your team. You're going to find it harder to get through to them. So how do you deal with this? Well, the best thing to do is you can, one, have the striker on false 9. But if you've got a pacey striker and you want him getting in behind, what you can also do is get one of these wingers to cut inside, come short, or free roam. It's very important that you've got one who is going to do it. Now, let's say, for example, in this case, we've got Milinkovic-Savic at cam, and he's on the right-hand side. In that case, you might find it more viable to complement that by having your left-sided winger cut inside and come on free roam rather than the right side, because in that case they're going to be clashing with each other. They're going to be sort of doing the same role. That's not what you want. So in that case, you're going to still have him getting in behind on the right hand side, and Milinkovic-Savic, who is an attacking midfielder in those more advanced areas, can complement that and play him in. And talking about runs, we can also look at, say, the central midfielder. He's in this 4-3-3. We've got Luis Alberto as that sort of deeper central midfielder. One thing that's very important not to do is to have him on something like get forward, because he's making a lot more runs, but as a result, you're going to find it harder to play through the thirds because he will have bombed on. Milinkovic-Savic might be in a more advanced area. You've already got the three wingers, in which case, how are you supposed to link up the play? It's going to be a bit harder. You're going to create more low percentage passes and more gaps in between all of your lines. So you want to try and complement that. Again, it's all about everything complementing everything else and playing into each other. So you've already got the likes of the front three, you've got an attacking midfielder. You know, you don't need another one bombing on. You've got the wing backs might be overlapping as well. In this case, we probably would have them. So he needs to provide a more relaxed possessional pivot and not be going on forward. So let's say you're playing a back three. What other elements could you add to make it a more successful possessional based system? One thing I would always suggest for a back three is overlapping centre backs. Now, of course, it is a bit of a risk and it's hard to find centre backs who can match that role, but you will find them. They are there. And what this does is it just adds more players, more options, more movement into your attacking phases. It's also worth bearing in mind that overlapping runs, particularly when you do an LB and A, very rarely get tracked because the opposition don't know how to handle it, and they haven't got someone assigned to that centre back. So it can be invaluable. You can find a lot of space with these overlapping centre backs, and it gives you more options and helps you retain possession more effectively. So that'll be it for the tactics, but in terms of some tips of playing a possessional based system, and one thing I would like to say, and it's a little bit obvious, but it's something that doesn't resonate with some people, and that is you've got to value possession. You know, you can't always play these low percentage risky passes over the top all the time. It just won't work. You have to make sure that you've got a little bit of recycling possession in your forte and in your armory. It's important to note that you don't have to go forward with every pass, you can go backwards. If you've played it into a player and someone's closing him down and it would be very hard for him to turn forwards, just play it back, just go backwards. If you have to go back to the keeper, do it, restart. You know, you have to value possession, recycle it, make it harder for the opposition to get the ball, make it harder for them to recover it, and tire them out as a result. That's the most important thing with a possession tactic. Again, in terms of crossing situations, try higher percentage stuff. You know, crosses, get it to the byline and try and cut it back. That's easier to do than just whipping the ball in aimlessly and hoping that, you know, a target man, for example, gets on the end of it. That sort of stuff, very valuable. Patterns of play such as 1-2 movements, give and goes, LB and A or L1 and X depending on the console you're playing on, very valuable again. These are all things that can add into making a successful possession based system. So that's really it then, guys. Let me know if you want any tips, anything whatsoever, any suggestions about the video, about this series. If you want to see more of these videos such as for pressing tactics, defensive tactics, counter-attacking tactics, all this good stuff, let me know in the comment section down below. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell to get notifications every time I upload, and check out my Patreon. The link to that is in the description, as are the links to all of my other stuff, my Twitter page, give me a follow on there, my second channel with Football Manager 2022 videos, and my affiliate links as well, where you can get access to all of my gear, my equipment, my gaming PC parts, all that good stuff. And don't forget to check out my Borussia Dortmund Realistic Career Mode series if you haven't done so already. That series is currently ongoing and I think you'll really enjoy that. And on that note, we're going to finish it off there. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and until next time, I will see you soon.